Good morning, everyone. On this wonderful day in February, and it's not 110, Reuben. Thank God. I want to talk about tradition and legalism versus godliness. In chapter 12 of Matthew, we picked this story up this morning, and Jesus is in the middle or more of his 3-year ministry, and he's starting to butt heads with the traditional Sanhedrin and priests on a regular basis now. And chapter 12 focuses on a particular ongoing battle between Jesus and tradition from the Sanhedrin, particularly regarding the Sabbath, Sunday, or in the Jews' case, Saturday. And I'm going to use the word Sabbath, which is their definition of a Sunday. It's a day set aside. It can be any day you want, but Jews happen to pick Saturday. Or you might hear me use the word Sabbat, which means the same thing. It's just Sabbat means day of prayer. We're using it, either word would suffice for a Sabbath day, which is, in this case, Saturday. And Jesus and the Sanhedrin are going to butt heads in this chapter several times over the Sabbat and what it is. And I have to take a little time and explain so that Eddie understands this, or he'll just get lost back there. And the problem that we're going to have is we need to understand what the Jewish people view the Sabbat as, the Sabbath day as. Because they do not view that day as we do here today. They set that day aside, but they set it aside for somewhat different reason than you and I might think. To get into that, because that's going to make, we spend a little time understanding this, it's going to make the conflicts that we're about to read about. Jesus gets into it with them over eating. As they go through a field, they're picking grain, eating it. And the Sanhedrin has a real problem with that. And to you and I, that would mean nothing. And it was a big deal for them. They made it a big deal. But if we understand a little bit of where they're coming from, you might understand a little bit more why they made it as big a deal and how Jesus picked up on that and he wouldn't let it go. He came right back to him on that. They butted heads over this on more than one occasion. They also butted head over performing miracles in the synagogue on Sabbath because it was not allowed under Jewish law on Sabbath. Only time it was allowed is if it was death-threatening. He healed a withered hand of a cripple, and they got all over him about it, called it work. They also got into a discussion about the bread in the temple. David went into the temple in the Old Testament and took that consecrated bread and ate it because they were hungry. Big deal. Big deal. And then the other thing that is going to come out here in a few minutes is the view of the temple itself. The Jews take a very high regard for the temple, and yet, watch this, they had a human form of the temple standing right in front of them that they did not recognize. How ironic. And while I was thinking of this, Eddie, something came to me that I should have known, or maybe I just took for granted. You realize the temple that they're currently talking about in chapter 12 is the rebuilt temple. You all know that. The original one got ransacked, hauled away. It all went with Nebuchadnezzar to Syria. And what they rebuilt, the Bible says that when some of the older people came back from Syria and saw the temple, they wept because it was such a poor representation of the original one. It just looked nothing like the original one. Anyway, that temple had some things that were different from the original temple. What would one of them be? They expanded it? Okay, I didn't know that, but maybe you're probably right. So it wasn't physically the same. I'm looking for. It's the Ark of the Covenant. It's gone. What else is missing? With that ark came the Shekinah glory of God. Is that true? It's not in it either. And then I had this thought, I didn't know about the expansion. Was there a most holy of holies in it since there's no Ark of the Covenant? I don't know. There'd be no need for an Ark of the Covenant since the presence of God in the form of an Ark of the Covenant and the Shekinah glory is not there. All these pictures we see and show of the temple are of the original temple. The second one didn't have that. I don't know if it had the Ark of the Covenant in it or the Holy of Holies or not. It didn't have the Ark of the Covenant. And the reason I'm saying that is because it was lacking some things. But the temple in the human form that was in front of them was not. So the representation of the temple in the human form had the Holy Spirit, had the presence of God, had the Shekinah glory of God. All of the things that were no longer present in the original temple or in the second temple are now present, walking and talking in front of them. And they missed it. Do you see the importance, how important it is for the Jews to change their focus from the building to the person? And yet they rejected him. The temple is so important, but the presence of God in front of them is not. How ironic is that? Now, if I can at least get your mindset into that, this rest of this is much easier to understand because some of this stuff goes back to tradition, which is still being practiced today. Now, one of the other things I thought, one of the things you read in here in the ministry of Jesus, he most always was in synagogue on Sabbath. It was his regular tradition to be in church on Saturday. Why? What were they going to teach Jesus? It's almost like the synagogue in the walking form going to the building. Why was it Jesus' regular routine to be at church on Saturday? He was the originator of most of what they were learning. It just seems odd that he was there, but he was always there. And sometimes he spoke up and taught. Sometimes he was invited to teach. So the person who went to church to be taught becomes the teacher. Why are you here this morning? I just talked to some people a minute ago. Why are you here this morning? Huh? Did you come for practice? Well, you practice. Did you come for practice and endure 45 minutes of me teaching? Is that the downside of this? Why are you here? Help her. You're what? Who called you? You sure? You heard his voice? You heard his voice? So you're here out of obedience. You also have a job here? Not supposed to work on the Sabbath. So you have an exemption. It's a trap. It is a trap. Give me that next slide. I'll bet one of those is you. Huh? She just said the first one. God told her to. You're involved in the second one. You're part of praise and worship. We get the Lord's Supper here. Hopefully you get your strength for your faith strengthened here. You participate and save. What about encouragement? Can you encourage someone else by being here? I hope so. Prayer? You can pray at home. But sometimes it's comforting or encouraging to be able to pray in an atmosphere that encourages that. Especially if you're down and you need or want people around you who are willing to help you in prayer as well, lifting you up. We hear that talked about. All of these are building blocks for reasons to go to church. The fellowship, that all fits together. And if you notice, they put it in blocks because it's building and making this building stronger. I think that's why Jesus went to church. Now, regarding this Sabbath thing, this church, this Sabbath church, you're going to be helpful here in a minute. This church has reasons or things that you should adhere to be a good member of this Jewish church. Give me that next slide. These things here are prohibitions, things that you should not be doing on Sabbath day. Kind of blurry, isn't it? What'd you say? Smooching. Smoothing. Smoothing's not. It's prohibited, Eddie. I do not. I do not. But let's break this down. Let me show you. Let's look at this and listen to this. Chapter 1 of Matthew, verse number 1. Father, touch us this morning and bless us. Let us gain wisdom from our attempt to learn more of you and your word this morning. Open eyes and ears and give me direction. In Jesus' name, everyone said amen. At this time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. It's Sabbath day. He's in the grain fields. He's traveling. No traveling. His disciples are hungry, and he began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." That's what they're referring to. These laws. What laws could you possibly break walking through a field of barley, picking some of the grain off the top of the stalk, and taking that grain, rubbing it between your hands, which is the seeds, and it gets all the hair and plant particles off the seeds, leaves them cleaner. Then you take this, and you blow it and get all the chaff, and you eat it. I have done that so many times over the years. Tastes like sunflower seeds, except it doesn't have no salt on it. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. But in this instance, it's wrong. And we have 2 or 3 things going on here that you need to realize. First, they're traveling. Sabbath day. No traveling. Second, they're working because they're harvesting food. They did this on the shafts and got a handful of seeds. Then they were winnowing, separating the plant from the seed. And fourth, they were harvesting, they were blowing the chaff away, and then they were eating. They broke 4 rules, not counting traveling. And the interesting thing that I also thought about, what were the Pharisees doing there? Because they saw them. Why are they there? And it's okay for them to be there, but not the apostles. Look at all the rules. And that's why it's so easy to break these rules, because there are so many of them. You couldn't carry, literally, anything. No burning, no extinguishing, no writing, no erasing, no cooking, no washing, no sewing, no knotting, and no untying. Plowing, planting, reaping, harvesting, threshing, winnowing, selecting, sifting, grinding, spinning, dyeing, chain stitching, no sewing, Sylvia. No building, no unraveling. And so it goes. So, can you see how easy it would be for the Pharisees or priests to find something you were doing if they chose to and chastise you for breaking the Jewish law? And that's what's going on here with these Pharisees that are following the apostles around. They can, if they choose, they can chastise them for almost anything. And they do that here in chapter 12. They're looking to pick this apart. And they have plenty of information they can use to do it if they choose to. And we think how unfair that is But let me also, and we've hit on this before, but and I won't spend a lot of time, but Sylvia, you'll know. We are products of Assembly of God teaching, whether we like to admit it or not. And in some of that, the Assemblies of God had some of the same ideas about what you could and couldn't do. I signed a card one time that promised I would never go to movies. Remember that? Never drink, never smoke. Girls couldn't cut their hair or dance. No jewelry, no makeup. You don't wear pants to church. No dancing. Huh? No sleeveless. No pants. You know about it. There was a bunch of no's. It's the same idea. So what you did is you signed a card that said, I'll never do that, and within a week you're doing it. Because nobody paid any attention to it. The only time they paid attention to it is when they wanted to pick on you for something. And it gave them the ammunition. It's the same as the Jews. All we did was change the name above the door. So you could see how this could make it easy for the apostles to be picked on by the Sanhedrin. They had plenty of information. When the Pharisees saw this, they looked at him and they said, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath. Jesus answered and said, haven't you read what David did when he and the companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent? He's talking about priests that are working, not allowed to work. Or haven't you read in the law that priests on Sabbath day duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. Here. You who have ears, let them hear. If you had known what these words mean, here we go. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. You would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. They didn't hear a word of this. This just checked out. What does that mean? You need to hear this. He says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Why would you have to sacrifice at all? Because you're paying for a sin. You're making atonement for a sin. Requires sacrifice. What if you didn't do the sin to begin with? He says he doesn't require the sacrifice. He'd rather have the mercy. What would that look like? What would that look like? What does that look like in this room this morning? I would rather have mercy than sacrifice. Instead of me jumping on you because you cut your hair, you wore makeup, you broke any one of these rules, I just said nothing at all and welcomed you to church and showed you mercy. What if? What if I just didn't say anything? And I showed you that I'm glad you're here this morning. And here comes the kicker. Instead of telling you God doesn't like black dresses, I just am glad you are here. And whatever it is that you need to learn doesn't have to come from me. It can come from God. I really believe that God can be a better teacher than I can. And the other thing I also would believe is if I told you that, your first reaction is going to be, who made you holier than me? You have no right to talk to me like that. And I'll show you how I feel about that. You won't see me here next Sunday. And how often have we done that? Jesus told him, I deserve, or I require, let me get it right, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Maybe part of my building stone is mercy, kindness. Maybe that saves me a whole bunch of trouble down the road. And instead of trying to meet all these rules and deciding I don't want to be Jewish, I'll go to a church where they'll not welcome me like I have to meet a certain set of rules, but I just have to show up because they appreciate my presence. And anything else that I either do or don't like about black dresses, if it really bothers me that much, I can pray to God and He can talk to you. And I suspect He can do a much better job of it than I can. Is that a yes or no? So you can keep your black dress on. But do we not want to go in and try and fix people ourselves? That's what the Jews are doing right now. They're telling Jesus, you need to meet our standards. And we tell people, you need to meet our standards. And I would tend to submit to you that my standards for how you live will always be higher than they are for myself. We just tend to do that. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Verse 9. There's 2 or 3 instances that happen in this one chapter, and they're all related to the same thing. Verse 9. I'm in Matthew chapter 12. Going on from that place, they went to a synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus. Did you hear that? Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Another trick question. Another chance to confront him. And Jesus responded and he said to them, if any of you has a sheep that falls into a pit in the Sabbath, will you not take a hold of it and pull it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Pretty straight question. Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched out and was completely restored, just as sound as the other. He restored what the law said that they were referring to, only healings that took place for life-threatening problems were going to be tolerated. What this indirectly says, this could have waited till tomorrow. So it was illegal. It was not life-threatening. They're picking on him. and he's coming back at them. He's not backing down from them. And it's creating more conflict. There are some people, especially in the traditional Jewish values and beliefs, that are going to be offended by Jesus. He has too much grace. He's too kind. He doesn't follow the letter of our laws. Now, let me ask you something, and you need to see this. These 39 laws are coming from where? These aren't written in the Bible. They're coming from man. These are rules that Jews have tacked on to their religion. Now, let me be fair about this, because I did give this a little thought, and I don't want this to come off as being an attack. What are the reasons that they're putting these laws in place? Could be control. Huh? Go ahead. Tradition? We hear that word a lot. And you know what I hear when I hear tradition? We do this because somebody else did it before us. I don't even know why women were told they had to grow long hair.
They didn't look like men. There you go.
Well, I don't know. I see a lot of long-haired men. I saw some basketball last night, and them guy had long hair. It had some of these, probably had some basis starting in the Bible, but they were taken out of context. Okay? What is the reason that these 39 right here that you're looking at, what's the purpose of having these? Holier than thou. Now we're going to a social status. Look at me. What about people coming up with these rules to stop you from being busy on Saturday, forcing you to stay home with your family, friends, and spending time with God in prayer? Would that be a result of this? If you can't do any of this, what's the one thing you can do? Sit at home and do nothing. Pray. But they weren't doing that. As a matter of fact, we know a little bit about what the Sanhedrin was doing. They're following the apostles around on Sabbath day, trying to pick them apart. So they're not doing it. I asked you earlier, what are the Sanhedrin doing in the fields following Christ's apostles? Aren't they supposed to be home doing what this advocates you do? So it appears there are times that they're following these rules, and there are times that they're not, like when it's convenient for me. Oh, am I talking about us this morning or the Jews? If the shoe fits. What they were trying to do, to give them the benefit of a doubt, is make you get closer to God. But did you hear the word? Make you. They're trying to force you to get closer to God. Is that a bad thing? Maybe not. But how they're doing it, you know what generally happens? He just did it. You didn't see him. When I said trying to make you get closer to God, the first thing he does is go like this. You know why? You don't want to be forced to do anything. Nobody likes that. As a matter of fact, if you try and force some of us to do things, we'll probably do just the opposite. This is kind of how we think. And you can see how this could get offensive. Maybe that's why we're not Jewish. Talk to me, Troy.
So we know, like, Jesus in the cross, God forced Jesus, not kind of forced him to do that. Like, so what if he said, no, I'm not doing this. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. What would have happened? Because that was kind of like forced. He had no choice. Like, he had no choice. On the cross, he said, God, Dad, I'm not doing it. Hey,
Well, now, wait a minute. I think you're trying to mix two things together that aren't all the same. But let me remind you of something. You're talking about Jesus had a choice to go to the cross. Do you not remember when Jesus the night before went to the Garden of Gethsemane? He asked Christ asked God, he says, if it be possible, take this from me. This is hard. And then he turned around right away and said, but I'm going to go see this through. He knew what was coming. He knew where this was going. Let me tell you, let's get back to this. You have a choice. The apostles had a choice. You can decide whether you want to do this stuff right now. If you do this, as she said, you're probably going to become in better standing in Jewish religion. And that in turn may get you into a situation where one day you get called and you become a member of the Sanhedrin. And now I can ask for writs and warrants of arrest, and I can go down to Damascus and I can arrest people that I don't think follow my thinking.
Ask Paul about that when he was
All right? Since you brought it up, you all know or should know I am talking about Saul. And he probably was setting himself up politically to become the next head priest. He had the political ambition. I think his family was wealthy. I think this guy was in good standing with the Sanhedrin. He's in spot. He's going to be the next president of the United States. And he's going down there with arrest warrants to arrest Christians. He's going to make something happen. He's the guy who's in charge. This is not just a guy who talks a good talk. He's willing to put his thoughts and talk into action. He's going to go get these guys. I'll go down there with a bunch of people and we'll just arrest them all or kill them. And in the middle of the trip, closer to Damascus, something dramatic happens. He literally meets Jesus Christ. And it changes his life instantly. It took a divine intervention to switch him. And by the time he got to Damascus, he is now setting himself up not to become the high priest, but to become a traitor. How dramatic a change is that? And that 3 days plus 3 years in the desert changed that man's life. Literally. And then he changed most of the world's life because he became the apostle to the Gentiles. He filled the vacancy. So what you have to do is you have to choose. How do these things apply to my life? Maybe some of them are silly. Maybe some of them are not. When the assemblies of God are coming to all these people and telling them they need to live a different life, one of the things they're trying to do is separate them from how other people look. From the world. You're distinguishing yourself from everyone else if for no other reason you look different. They'll have to walk with you a while to find out if you act different. But when I think about this, Sylvia, and I think this, some of this obviously was carried way too far. But the reason it is, they want you to look different. You are a version, this is going to sound stupid to you, you are a version of John the Baptist. He looked different, he talked different, he ate different. He acted different. And the reason he did that is because he wanted to stand out and be recognizable. What about you? I think part of the problem today is we have people that are so intent on looking like the crowd. I need these kind of clothes because I need to fit in. I need my hair this way. I need my clothes this way. I need to act a certain way or I'll stand out. And what we're trying to do in our churches, or at least we are attempting to do, is tell you, and the Jews are, I think they're attempting to do this as well, I want you to look different. I want you to stand out. Jesus says, I want you to talk different. I want you to act different. Why? Because you are different. You're a child of God who knows he's a child of God. It's an inward change, and that's exactly where it starts. And how do you find out something's taken place inward? Because of what proceeds out of their mouth. Because I can't see your heart. And this is the problem that Jesus is having with these Jews from the Sanhedrin, is they keep picking him apart over this. In Matthew chapter 12, I need to skip down for lack of time. I want to show you or drive this one thing home. Let's finish with this. Go to verse 22. The Sanhedrin couldn't tear him apart because of breaking rules. They got all wound up about casting out demons. And he cast out demons, and they accused him of having the authority of casting out demons from Beelzebub, demon. Well, that had no water at all, because Jesus simply countered and said, how would I cast out demons exercising the authority of a demon? That didn't even make sense. And they had that argument easily defeated, because in verse 25 Jesus said their thoughts. He knew their thoughts and said, every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined. And every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he's divided against himself, and how can his kingdom stand? And if I drive out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do you people drive them out? So then they will be your judges. But if it is by the Spirit of God that I drive out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. What's he saying here? I'm the new temple. He's right in front of you. And I can confirm that with a verse he also said earlier that I skipped to come back to. Go back to verse 13. Remember when he told the guy with the withered hand to be healed, and he healed him? Look at this verse. He said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched it out, and he was completely restored. This is the hand that got healed in the synagogue. Just as sound as the other. What was the reaction of the Pharisees on the same Sabbath day that they got on him about healing? What was their reaction? Verse 14. The Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. They just didn't get it. The reaction was, we have to rid the world not only of this man, of this thinking. This thinking. This cannot be allowed to continue. It's so offensive to me that not only do I want to leave his presence, I want him to be gone as well. We can't allow this. This happened on the Sabbath day in church. Ooh. Any comments? Questions? I'm done.